With spring right around the corner, this is actually a fairly common time where people start to talk about detoxification. Spring is the time in traditional Chinese medicine of the liver and gallbladder. So oftentimes you'll hear about doing a liver gallbladder cleanse in the spring through that lens. Or in Ayurveda, you'll also oftentimes find guidelines for a spring cleanse. So kind of like after essentially being inside in the winter, maybe eating some heavier foods in the winter, the spring might be a time to give the body a break and allow the body to do some natural detoxification. And I'm all for that. I really think that is an important transition that we're going into coming to the spring. But through the lens of quantum biology, I always say we want to talk about redox first, along with drainage and detoxification, and how light alone can be very important in supporting the detoxification inside of the cells. And so I think we don't necessarily understand, a lot of people don't understand, I didn't at least, how things can get pushed out of the cells. Like, how do you, if the toxins can come in, how do they get in? And then how do toxins get eventually pushed out of the cell? And that has to do with understanding very clearly the role that easy water plays inside of the cell. So I'm going to share my screen. This presentation is from, or this slide that you're about to see is from the redox, drainage, and detox module that I did in my practitioner trainings. And I want to orient you here because what you see here at the top, it's a very basic animal cell. Okay, I didn't jam pack it full of organelles. I kind of wanted you to see, though, the idea was that we have a couple of things inside of the cell that will allow the cell to build massive amounts of exclusion zone water. Remember, this exclusion zone water forms a gel-like consistency, and it's called exclusion zone because it doesn't allow things to penetrate into it unless there is a specific what's called phase transition that takes place, that essentially the water says, oh, we need that nutrient in the cell. Let's transition to a more liquid phase to allow that nutrient in. But otherwise, the cell is really packed full of this gelled-like exclusion zone water, almost acting as a barrier to prevent unwanted things from entering the cell. Now, these days in our modern life, we are surrounded by things that both deplete exclusion zone water, and we're also not surrounded by the things that restore healthy exclusion zone water levels in the cell. So things that deplete exclusion zone water are things like wireless radiation and artificial blue light, imbalanced toxic blue light. Both of those work through the lens of dehydrating the cell by impairing mitochondrial water production. Remember that the water that the mitochondria make ultimately can become structured into this easy water inside of the cell. It also will just prevent easy water from forming to its fullest potential. So there was this beautiful research that was done by Dr. Jerry Pollack's lab that showed that when the essentially representations of cells were subject to wireless radiation from a Wi-Fi router, exclusion zones weren't able to form to their full capacity. They were reduced by about 15 to 20%. And so think about all the wireless radiation that we may have in our environment that's impacting our cells' ability to maintain healthy exclusion zone water levels. And then lastly, we are infrared light deficient in our interior environments. Our light bulbs don't contain them like incandescents did. So LEDs don't contain it, fluorescent lights don't contain infrared, and our modern window glass blocks about 40% of it for energy efficiency purposes. And so now we are infrared deficient. Well, why does that matter? Well, infrared light, specifically the infrared range that we would feel as heat coming from the sun, is absorbed preferentially by the exclusion zone water inside of us and causes that exclusion zone water to grow or expand to its maximum capacity, to essentially its important threshold to fill the cell. All right, so what are we dealing with, and how does this lead to detoxification? Well, as I already said before, modern life is full of things that may cause exclusion zone water to be depleted. So instead of having a cell that's full of exclusion zone water, it would have essentially what's called more bulk water, or water that is not structured in that exclusion zone format and takes on a very liquidy quality, so the liquid form of water. That allows things into the cell that the cell doesn't necessarily want. So things like heavy metals can get in there. Things like glyphosate can get into the cell. And unfortunately, these types of substances have been shown to further damage the mitochondria and further deplete exclusion zone water. So the cell becomes essentially a drained water battery that allows toxins into it, and the cell starts to become highly dysfunctional. Well, what do we do then through the lens of detoxification and light? In my opinion, it's very important to get a client's light environment right, including infrared light application on the body. Because as the client starts to build exclusion zone water through infrared light on the skin, that exclusion zone grows and it allows any toxins that are trapped inside of the cell to get pushed out, excluded from the cell, where it can go into the interstitial space around the cell. So that's where I want to highlight kind of the two other images on this slide here, where you'll see that there's cells, but the cells aren't physically fully touching. There is space between the cells. And so you have a cell, but outside of the cell, you have this thing called the interstitial fluid, where the immune system lives. So you'll see macrophages, immune cells. It's where you have the extracellular matrix. So you'll see things like fibroblasts and collagen fibrils. You'll have capillaries there, which are the tiny little blood vessels that are designed to deliver hydration and nutrients into the cell, allow that fluid to flow into the cell. And then you've got lymphatic vessels, which are designed to take the waste that is coming from the cell and allows the body to process it through the lymphatic system. And so if you physically can't get toxins to the exterior of the cell because the exclusion zone water in the cell is lacking, it's not going, a thorough detoxification is not going to happen. And so as a clinician, I think it's very important to understand this concept of building exclusion zone water as a means of supporting any detoxification strategy. Not only that, but the exclusion zone water acts as energy. And detoxification requires energy. We're looking to reduce oxidative stress. We're looking to process toxins. And that requires added energy. And we know that exclusion zone water is a battery of energy. And so, in addition, exclusion zone water is designed to line the lymphatic blood vessel or the lymphatic vessels and line the blood vessels. And when the vessels themselves have adequate exclusion zone water lining them, there's improved flow through these vessels. I mean, have you ever wondered why the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump? Well, turns out that light allows the fluid to flow regardless of a pumping mechanism. Yes, we can move the lymph with dry brushing. Yes, we can move it with gentle pumping exercises ourselves, or rebounding, or exercise, or movement. All of those are really, really important. However, infrared supports the flow independent of those things. And so this is a missing factor from our clinician's toolbox when it comes to supporting our client's detoxification process. So now make note though. Through the lens of a clinician, you also may find people who are highly sensitive to infrared. Do any of you have those clients who can't sweat, right? Well, if they can't sweat, that might be an indication that they have a lot of toxicity inside of their cells, and then an inability to drain that toxicity because of blocked lymphatic drainage. So this will give you some tools here to work with, kind of like to troubleshoot what's going on. But I really think building exclusion zone water is the main thing we need to focus on. And that can be done, yes, through infrared light on the skin, but it can also be done through earthing and grounding, which is why springtime is another good time to support detoxification. It can be done through traditional herbal remedies that have been shown to have thousands of years of healing support. So things like tulsi or holy basil or turmeric are natural ways that you can support exclusion zone water levels in the body. And so I just think that this really creates more of a complete picture when it comes to supporting detoxification. And I always say the steps look like this: build redox, which is another way to say build exclusion zone water at the same time as you support drainage. And then detoxification will naturally take place. And then if there's other layers that want to be supported in these detox pathways, by all means, use your clinician's toolbox to the best of your ability for that. But building redox and opening drainage goes a long way towards allowing the body to naturally exclude toxins from the cell, and allow them to be processed through the appropriate drainage pathways. So hope this gives you a little something extra you can work with your clients, and I look forward to seeing you next time. So bye.